In the 1970s, a family lived in an old house in the city of Lahore, Pakistan, which was known as the Devil's House. The Devil's House was a large, old house located on a vast land, and due to the dark and scary rumors surrounding it, it had stirred up a lot of excitement and fear in people. The Pakistani family living in this house were very satisfied with it. They never believed in the dark and scary rumors about the house, and the only thing that mattered to them was the peace and security of their family. But one night, everything changed. The Pakistani family were in the house and had gone to sleep when, in the middle of the night, their eyelids opened with a loud noise. Everyone looked at each other and fear and excitement showed on their faces. The head of the family went out of his room to investigate and close the door. But when he reached the grounds of the house, he saw nothing but darkness and silence. There was no one around the house and no sound was heard. The head of the family returned to the house easily and thought that maybe his children wanted to open the door. But the sound of the doors opening behind the rooms and also the sound of footsteps jumping on the eyelids was evident to the whole family. The Pakistani family all moved towards the door to see what had happened. With their own eyes, they were very scared of the situation that had occurred in their rooms. Everything had changed in a terrifying way. The curtains were removed from the windows and the darkness of the night had spread over the rooms. Also, what was more terrifying than anything else, were the chairs that were placed in the rooms. Each chair was inside a room, and each one had the name of the family's old and dry grandfather written on it. For the family, this situation was very terrifying, but they decided that they could not leave this house under any circumstances. They continued their lives in this house and tried to escape from these strange and terrifying conditions. But a few nights later, a terrible thing happened. The head of the family screamed loudly in his room and everyone moved towards him. They entered his room and saw that he was pounding his hands on the wall and screaming in a terrifying way. The family tried to calm him down, but they couldn't. After a few minutes, the head of the family fell silent. Everyone asked him what had happened and why he had screamed so loudly, but he remained silent and did not speak about the incident. After this event, the family was looking for a way to escape from the Devil's House, to find a way to get rid of the terrifying conditions that had been imposed on them in the house. They were looking for a spiritual advisor to help them, but no one could help them. Suddenly, on a dark and cold night, the family went looking for a mosque to take refuge in, and they began to search for a way to escape from the Devil's House. Along the way, they came across an old, dark house next to the road. The house was dark and dilapidated, and many of its rooms were destroyed. But the family took refuge there, and the next morning, they started searching for a spiritual advisor again to help them with the haunted house. Everything was dark and spooky in that place. The walls were covered in broken and unreadable writings of magic and sorcery. The doors and windows were broken and their locks were destroyed, and the rooms were empty. Yet, the Devil's House still remained a place for collecting its victims. A Pakistani family had taken refuge in their new haunted house and stayed there for a few nights. They wanted to live temporarily in this house to remember the devil's house. But every night, they heard a sound coming from the devil's house that increased their excitement and fear. A sound that came from the empty and dark rooms of the house and horrifically frightened their hearts. One night, the Pakistani family was in the haunted house and was very excited. They heard a sound coming from the devil's house that increased their excitement and fear. But this time, they heard another sound as well. A sound coming from somewhere else in the house made them move towards it. They moved towards a room that was on the top floor of the house and its door was closed. But the sound coming from there made them feel that something terrifying was waiting for them in that room. The little boy of the family knocked on the door of the room with his hands and asked to enter. But there was no answer. He said to his friend, "Come with me, we have to open this door and see what's inside." His friend agreed, and they both moved towards the door. The boy knocked on the door with his hands and loudly requested to open it. But there was no answer. At that moment, the Pakistani family moved towards the room and joined them, seeing their two little boys knocking on the door. They opened the door with all their might and entered the room. It was a room with wooden walls and a small window. But there was something in this room that made the Pakistani family fall apart. A small child with dark and electrifying eyes stared at them. He was wandering around in this room like a spirit in the darkness and looking at everyone with his eyes. The Pakistani family felt that something unpleasant was in this room. They moved towards the door to get out, but the door suddenly closed and locked. The Pakistani family was looking for the key to get out, but everything was dark in this room, and no one could find the key. After a few minutes, another sound was heard in this room. It was a sound that could not be accurately identified where it was coming from. But it made the Pakistani family move towards that sound. They moved towards one of the walls of the room and, seeing something all over the wall, both of them were severely frightened. What was all over the wall were sentences written in red lines. "The devil lives here." The Pakistani family was surprised by this writing. They were looking for a way to get out of this room, but the door was closed, and they had no key. At this moment, the little boy of the family said, "I can open the door. I know something about locks." The story goes like this. The little boy of the family moved towards the door and with great effort, he managed to open the lock. But no one could figure out how he could open the door. The Pakistani family left the room, and as they were walking towards the stairs, they heard a loud noise coming from behind another door. They moved towards it and were frightened to see another family huddled in a room. At that moment, the house's door slammed shut with a loud noise, and no one could open it. The Pakistani family was trapped in the house and had no way out. Days passed, and no one could help the Pakistani family. They were trapped in the haunted house with another family, and their attempts to find a way out were in vain. In the end, all members of the Pakistani family gradually lost their lives in that haunted house. No one could help them, and no one could escape from the house. It was a bitter and sad story in which all the characters died, and no one could help them. The haunted house remained there, causing the terrifying death of the Pakistani family. Darkness and fear still prevailed in the house, and no one could escape from it.